Ezinne sat on the wooden stool in front of her thatched hut, her fingers running through the hem of her faded wrapper. It had been years since her husband Obinna passed away, but the pain of his loss still clung to her like an old wound that refused to heal. Her children, Chibuzo and Adora, had grown into adulthood, but the burden of life had etched premature lines on their faces. Poverty had a way of making time feel cruel, stretching each day into an eternity of suffering. Chibuzo, have you seen the price of yam in the market today? Ezine asked her son, her voice heavy with worry. Chibuzo, a tall and quiet young man, sat beside her, shaking his head. The prices keep rising, Mama. I tried to bargain with the seller, but it seems no one has any mercy left these days, Chibuzo replied, his tone filled with frustration. Adora, sitting by the doorway, folded her arms across her chest and sighed. "We can't keep going like this," she muttered under her breath. "If only Uncle Ikoku would help us, even a little." Ezinne's heart clenched at the mention of her husband's younger brother, Chief Ikoku. He was the wealthiest man in the village, known for his large mansion and his vast acres of land, but for reasons she couldn't understand, Ikoku had turned his back on them. He had refused to come to Obinna's burial and had since ignored every plea for help. "I've tried, Adora," Ezinne said, her voice breaking. "I've gone to him, begged him, but each time his guards push me out like I'm dirty." "How can he be so heartless?" Chibuzo spat, anger flashing in his eyes. "His own brother's family, and he sits in his mansion, living in luxury, while we struggle just to eat." Ezinne closed her eyes, tears welling up. "I don't know, my son. I don't know why he is like this." There was a silence between them, the kind of silence that comes from shared pain. Chibuzo clenched his fist. "We can't rely on him anymore, Mama. We need to find a way to survive on our own." "But how?" Adora asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "We've tried everything. There's no work, and no one wants to help us. We can't even afford to send me to the city for better opportunities." Ezinne sighed deeply. "We will find a way, Adora. We have to." But even as she said the words, she didn't believe them. The truth was, without Chief Ikoku's help, life would remain unbearably hard. She had thought that blood would count for something, but Ikoku had made it clear that they were not his concern. "I will go to him again tomorrow," Ezinne said suddenly, her voice firm. Both her children turned to her in surprise. "Mama, no!" Adora protested. "You can't keep humiliating yourself like that. He doesn't care about us. He has made that very clear." Ezinne shook her head. "I can't give up, for your sake. I must try again. Maybe this time he will listen." Chibuzo stood up, passing the small compound. "And if he doesn't, what then?" "Then we will keep trying until we find another way," Ezinne replied, though her heart felt heavy with doubt. The next morning, as the sun rose over the village, Ezinne wrapped her old wrapper around her shoulders and set out for Chief Ikoku's mansion. The journey felt longer than usual, her legs weighed down by the anxiety of yet another rejection. When she arrived at the mansion's large iron gates, she was greeted by the usual sight: two bully guards standing with their arms crossed, scowling at her as if she were an intruder. "I need to see Chief Ikoku," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Please." The guards exchanged glances and one of them snarled, "You again? The chief has no time for you." "Please, just tell him I'm here. I beg you," Ezinne implored, clasping her hands together. but the guards only laughed. The chief doesn't care about beggars. Go back to where you came from. Before she could plead any further, the second guard stepped forward, pushing her roughly to the floor. I told you before, woman, stay away from here. The news spread through the village like wildfire. Chief Ikeokwu was gifting the widows with money and provisions. Ezinne first heard it from her neighbor, Nneka, who rushed into her compound one afternoon, panting and out of breath. Ezinne, have you heard? Chief Ikeokwu is giving money to all the widows, Nneka exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. Ezinne, who had been sitting on a low stool washing clothes, froze. Are you sure? She asked, her and cautious hope. I swear on my life, many have already gone there and returned with bundles of cash and bags of rice. You should go now before the crowd becomes too large, Nneka urged. Ezinne's heart raced. After all the humiliation, could this be true? Could Ikeokwu have had a change of heart? But will he give me anything? She asked quietly. He has refused me so many times before. Nneka grabbed her arm. You are a widow too, just like the others. It doesn't matter if he's turned you away before. Go now, before it's too late. Without further hesitation, Ezinne rose to her feet, her hands trembling as she wiped them on her wrapper. I will go, she whispered, trying to quit the doubts swelling in her mind. The walk to Chief Ikoku's mansion felt both familiar and foreign. She had made this journey countless times, each one more painful than the last. But this time, there was a flicker of hope, something she hadn't felt in years. Perhaps today would be different. When she arrived, a long queue of widows stretched before the iron gates. Some stood patiently, while others murmured in excitement, clothing their wrappers tightly around them. Ezinne hesitated, standing at the back of the line, her heart pounding. Do you think he will give you something this time? A woman in front of her asked, glancing back. I don't know, Ezinne admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. As the line moved slowly, she found herself getting closer to the gate. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if Chief Ikoku truly had changed? What if he finally decided to help her and her children after all these years? When she reached the front, she saw Chief Ikoku standing under the shade of a large tree in the compound, handing out bundles of cash and provisions to the widows. He looked every bit the powerful man he was, dressed in fine robes, gold jewelry glittering in the sunlight. His guards stood around him, stern and imposing. Ezinne stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly as she approached him. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. But when Chief Ikoku's eyes fell on her, his expression hardened, and he waved his hand dismissively. What is she doing here? He barked, his voice cold. Ezinne's heart sank. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was frozen, caught between hope and fear. One of the guards stepped forward, grabbing her by the arm. You've been told before not to come here. Leave, he groaned. Please, I beg you, Ezinne cried, falling to her knees in front of Chief Ikoku. I have nothing. My children are suffering. Please help us, just this once. Chief Ikoku's eye narrowed, and for a moment there was silence. The other widows looked on, some whispering amongst themselves. Throw her out, he commanded. But Ezinne refused to move, clinging to the hem of his robe. Please, I beg you in the name of your brother Obinna, don't turn me away again. At the mention of Obinna's name, Chief Ikoku paused. His face twisted into a grimace, but he raised his hand, signaling the guard to stop. Leave her, he muttered. The guard hesitated, then stepped back, releasing his grip on Ezinne. She remained on her knees, looking up at Chief Ikoku with tears streaming down her face. Ikoku stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked into the house. Ezinne didn't know what to expect, whether he would return with something or send his guards to chase her away again. Minutes later, Chief Ikoku emerged, Holding a different bundle of cash in his hand, he walked slowly towards Ezinne, his face stern, and thrust the money into her hand. "Take it," he said coldly, "and don't come back here begging again." Ezinne looked down at the bundle, her eyes wide with disbelief. It was more money than she had seen in years. She clutched it tightly, tears of relief spilling from her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you, Chief Ikoku. May God bless you. May He bless you for this kindness." Ikoku said nothing, only watched her with an emotionless gaze as she stood up, still clutching the money. She bowed repeatedly, murmuring her thanks, and then turned to leave, her heart soaring with relief. As she walked away, she couldn't help but smile through her tears. Finally, after all these years, Chief Ikoku had shown her a small kindness. Finally, there was hope for her and her children. But as she disappeared down the path, Chief Ikoku watched her retreating figure and let out a low. His lips coiled into an evil smile, and he muttered under his breath, "Let's see how long she will last." It had been a few weeks since Ezinne received the money from Chief Ikoku, and for the first time in a long while, things seemed to be getting better for her family. With the money, she had been able to buy food and other necessities, and there was a sense of relief in their small household. But soon, something strange began to happen. One morning, Ezinne woke up feeling unusually weak. At first, she thought it was just exhaustion from the endless chores, but as the days went by, her condition worsened. Her body grew frail, and she could barely stand. By the third week, Ezinne could hardly get out of bed. "Mama, you need to eat something," Adora urged one evening, kneeling beside her mother and offering her a bowl of soup. Ezinne shook her head weakly, her lips pale and dry. "I can't, Adora. I have no appetite." Chibuzo, pacing the room, stopped and looked at his sister. "We need to take her to the hospital. She's not getting better." "I know," Adora whispered, "but what if it's expensive? We barely have enough money left." "We will manage," Chibuzo said firmly. "We can't just sit here and watch her suffer." The next morning, they rushed Ezinne to the nearest hospital, carrying her between them. The hospital was small and crowded, with patients spilling out into the corridors. After what seemed like hours of waiting, a nurse finally attended to them and led them to a doctor's office. Dr. Okoro, a stern-looking man in a white coat, examined Ezinne and then signed heavily. "She's in critical condition. We need to run several tests and start treatment immediately." Chibuzo and Adora exchanged nervous glances. "What's wrong with her, doctor?" Adora asked, her voice shaky. "We won't know until we run the test," Dr. Okoro replied. "But for us to proceed, you will need to deposit 300,000 naira." 300,000? Chibuzo gasped, his eyes wide with shock. "Yes," the doctor said firmly. "We can't begin treatment without the deposit. Go to the cashier and make the payment." Chibuzo's heart sank. He and his sister barely had a few thousand naira left after buying food and medicine for their mother. "Doctor, please," he begged. "We don't have that kind of money. Can't you start the treatment while we try to raise the funds?" Dr. Okoro shook his head. "I am sorry, but hospital policy requires the payment upfront. Come back when you have the money." As they left the doctor's office, Adora was already crying. "What are we going to do, Chibuzo? How will we find that kind of money?" Chibuzo clenched his fist, feeling the weight of his helplessness. "I don't know," he muttered, his voice filled with frustration. "But we can't give up. We have to find a way." For days, the two of them tried everything. Chibuzo went to friends, neighbors, and distant relatives, asking for loans, but no one had enough to give. Adora even tried selling some of their belongings, but it barely made a dent in the amount they needed. One evening, after another day of failed attempts, Chibuzo sat in their small compound, his head in his hands. He thought of their last option, the one place he had been avoiding. "I'm going to see Chief Ikeokwu," he finally said, breaking the silence. Adora looked up at him, alarmed. "What? No, Chibuzo. You know what he's like. He won't help." "I have to try," Chibuzo said firmly. "Mama is dying. I can't sit here and do nothing." The next morning, Chibuzo gathered his courage and walked to Chief Ikokwu's compound. When he arrived, the guards at the gate eyed him suspiciously, but allowed him in after he explained that he was there to see the chief. Ikeokwu was lounging in his lavish garden, sipping from a glass of palm wine, when Chibuzo approached him. "What do you want?" Ikeokwu asked, without looking up, his voice cold and detached. Chibuzo took a deep breath, swallowing his pride. "Chief, my mother is very sick. We need money for her treatment, but we don't have enough. Please, I'm begging you, help us." Ikeokwu finally looked up, his face expressionless. He stared at Chibuzo for a long moment before waving his hand dismissively. "I've already given your mother money. Don't come here begging for more." "Please, Chief," Chibuzo pleaded, falling to his knees. "He needs 300,000. I'm not asking for much. Just help us save her life." Ikoku's face twisted into a sneer. "Get up and leave, boy. I'm not a charity. You people disgust me with your constant begging." Chibuzo's heart shattered, but before he could say another word, Ikoku stood up and called his guards. "Escort him out of my house and make sure he doesn't come back." The guards grabbed Chibuzo by the arms and dragged him to the gate, throwing him out roughly. As he dusted himself off, his eyes burned into tears of frustration and anger. How could a man be so cruel? When he returned home, Adora was waiting anxiously by the door. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling. Chibuzo shook his head, unable to speak. Adora's face fell, and tears welled up in her eyes. "If Chief Ikeokwu won't help you, maybe he will listen to me." "No, Adora," Chibuzo said sharply. "You know what kind of man he is. I don't want you anywhere near him." "I don't have a choice, Chibuzo," Adora said quietly, her voice filled with determination. "Mama is dying. I will do whatever it takes." The next morning, Adora made her way to Chief Ikoku's mansion. Her heart pounded with fear, but she steeled herself, knowing this might be their last hope. When she arrived, the guards let her in without hesitation, and she was led to where Ikeokwu sat, lounging in his garden once again. He looked up when she approached, a strange gleam in his eyes. "What do you want, girl?" he asked, though his tone was much softer than it had been with Chibuzo. Adora knelt before him. "Chief, I'm begging you. My mother is very sick, and the hospital won't treat her unless we pay 300,000 naira. Please help us. I will do anything." Ikoku's lips coiled into a smile, his eyes lingering on her face, then slowly roaming down her body. "Anything you say," he murmured, his voice dripping with suggestion. Adora's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Yes, anything." Ikoku leaned forward, his eyes dark with lust. "Then we have an agreement. But first, you must do something for me." Adora felt a chill run down her spine as Ikoku's gaze lingered over her bombi with a disturbing intensity. Adora stood frozen, her heart racing, as Chief Ikoku's cold calculating eyes bored into her. "I will give you more than what you are asking for," he said smoothly, his voice low and dripping with suggestion. but only if you do something for me in return." Adora's stomach twisted. She didn't need him to explain further. His meaning was clear. Her throat tightened, and for a moment she felt like she couldn't breathe. She shook her head, backing away slightly. "No, Chief, I can't. I won't do that." Ikoku's expression didn't change. He simply shrugged his fingers, playing with the gold ring on his hand. "Then you won't get anything from me. You should leave." Without another word, Adora turned and hurried out of the mansion, her mind racing. The shame, the disgust, the helplessness all came crashing down on her. How could he suggest such a thing? She felt dirty just hearing the words. As she walked home, her steps felt heavy, and her mind swelled with anger and frustration. Halfway home, she bumped into her friend Amaka, who was on her way to the market. Amaka stood, looking surprised to see her so upset. "Adora, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," Amaka asked, her brows furrowing in concern. Adora hesitated for a moment, then sighed and blurted out everything. "I went to Chief Ikoku to ask for some money for my mother's treatment, but he said he would only help me if I slept with him." Amaka's eyes widened, but instead of the shock Adora had expected, there was something else in her friend's gaze, something understanding. "And you said no?" "Of course I said no." Adora's voice cracked with emotion. "How could I do something like that? How could he even think I would agree to such a thing?" Amaka shifted uncomfortably, gazing around to make sure no one was nearby. "Adora," she began consciously, "maybe you should think about it." "What?" Adora was taken aback. "Are you serious, Amaka?" "I am," Amaka said softly, her voice steady. "Look, I've been in your position before. My mother was sick too, and I didn't have the money for her treatment. I went to Chief Ikoku and he made the same offer to me." Adora stared at her friend in disbelief. "And you slept with him?" Amaka nodded, her expression calm. "Yes, I did, and I got the money. My mother lived because of it." "How could you? How could you do that?" Adora whispered, feeling a wave of nervous. Amaka sighed. "Sometimes we don't have a choice, Adora. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's about survival. Your mother is dying, and you need that money. Are you really going to let her die just because of pride?" Adora's chest tightened, and she felt tears prick at her eyes. "But it's wrong, Amaka. It's disgusting." "I know," Amaka said softly, "but what's more important? Your mother's life or your pride? You can hate yourself for it later, but at least your mother will be alive." Adora looked down at the ground, her heart aching with indecision. Her mind screamed no, but her mother's weak, frail face flashed before her eyes. She couldn't just let her die. "I don't know if I can do it," Adora whispered, her voice trembling. "Think about it, Adora," Amaka said gently. "You don't have much time." She couldn't bear the thought of losing her mother, not when there was a way to save her, no matter how horrible it seemed. Adora went back to Chief Ikoko's mansion. Her legs felt like lead as she walked up the steps, and her heart pounded in her chest. The guards let her in without a word, and when she stood before Ikoku again, she could barely meet his eyes. "So you've changed your mind," Ikoku said, with a smug smile, his gaze lingering on her. Adora nodded, unable to speak. She felt her body tense with shame, but she forced herself to remain still. Her mother's life depended on this. "Good," Ikoku said, standing up and walking toward her. "Follow me." The next few hours were a nightmare for Adora, but she forced herself to endure it, her mind blank as she went through the motions. When it was over, Ikoku handed her a bundle of cash for more than the 300,000 naira she had asked for. "Here," he said with a smirk. "This should cover everything." Adora didn't say a word. She took the money and left the mansion as quickly as she could, her heart heavy with shame. She felt dirty, broken, but at least she had what she needed. When she got home, Chibuzo was waiting anxiously. "Did you get the money?" he asked, his eyes wide with hope. Adora forced a smile and handed him the bundle of cash. "Yes, we have enough now." Chibuzo let out a breath of relief, hugging her tightly. "Thank God, Adora. I don't know how you did it, but thank you. Mama will be saved." Adora nodded, but her heart felt like it was being crushed. She couldn't tell him the truth. Not now. Not ever. He wouldn't understand. Chibuzo left for the hospital while Adora stayed back. Few hours after the encounter with Chief Ikoku, Adora began to feel serious pain in her stomach. The pain didn't stop. Rather, it grew worse every passing second.